Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times News Podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW. Or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of September 2022, from the news section, family of murdered teenager Amanda Duffy welcomes plan to scrap not proven verdict, by Nicole Mitchell and Catherine Bussey. The father of a murdered teenager has said his family will be absolutely delighted if Scotland's controversial not proven verdict is scrapped. Joe Duffy has been campaigning for the abolition of the third verdict, which is unique to Scotland, since the trial of the man accused of killing his daughter. Frances Auld was acquitted of murdering 19-year-old student Amanda Duffy after her body was found on waste ground in Hamilton in 1992, with a jury returning a verdict of not proven against him. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has now announced plans to abolish the verdict, with this to be included in a forthcoming criminal justice bill. Mr Duffy said that having the third option available to juries was unnecessary and outmoded, and that its abolition was long overdue. Speaking on BBC Radio Scotland's Good Morning Scotland programme, he added, "Hopefully this bill will get passed and we will be, as a family, absolutely delighted." While the Law Society of Scotland has said it is deeply concerned about the change, Mr Duffy said, "I don't see how it gives additional protection. If there's insufficient evidence or the evidence isn't good enough, you're actually entitled to a not guilty verdict, surely. Guilty and not guilty works in every country in the world. The only place that is unique is Scotland." He said there was no other country in the world that has three verdicts, especially when you consider two of them being exactly the same thing. Ms Sturgeon has said that if legislation to abolish the not proven verdict is passed, it will be a change of truly historic significance in Scotland and one firmly intended to improve access to justice for victims of crime. And that report was by Nicole Mitchell and Catherine Bussey. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of September 2022, from the news section, Glasgow man found dead under MET Bridge near Bonnybridge, named, by Nicole Mitchell, multimedia journalist. A man who was found dead under a motorway bridge near Bonnybridge has been named. The body of John Barr Johnson, from Glasgow, was discovered at around 12:10 am on Thursday, September the 15th, when officers were called to Station Road, Longcroft, underneath the MET overbridge. It is understood the 47-year-old's Ford Fiesta had broken down on the motorway around 10:50 pm on Wednesday, and he stopped on a hard shoulder. An investigation into his death is ongoing, but police confirmed this has not been treated as suspicious. Officers previously appealed for witnesses who were driving in the motorway near Haggs Junction at Bonnybridge between 10:45 pm on Wednesday and 12:10 am on Thursday. Appealing for witnesses, Detective Sergeant Andy Garner said of Mr Johnson earlier this week, "Around 10:50 pm on Wednesday, he had been driving his silver-coloured Ford Fiesta northbound on the M80 just after the Haggs Junction when his car broke down and he stopped in a hard shoulder. We would appeal to anyone who was driving on the motorway between 10:45 pm on Wednesday night and 12:10 on Thursday morning when the police were called. If anyone saw the silver-coloured Ford Focus at the side of the motorway, please get in touch. I would also appeal to any drivers on that road between those times who have dashcam footage to contact officers." And that report was by Nicole Mitchell. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of September 2022, from the news section, moped driver rushed to hospital following crash on Hayburn Street in Glasgow, by Nicole Mitchell. A moped driver has been rushed to hospital following a crash in the West End. We previously reported emergency services were called to Hayburn Street in Partick at its junction with Dumbarton Road at around 1:15 pm today, following a crash involving two cars and a moped. One man, the moped driver, has been taken to Queen Elizabeth University Hospital by ambulance following the incident. His condition is not currently known. Officers confirmed a woman will be reported to the Procurator Fiscal in connection with alleged road traffic offences. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, around 1:15pm on Saturday, September the 17th, 2022, police were called to a 3-vehicle, 2 cars and a moped road crash on Hayburn Street at its junction with Crow Road, Glasgow. One man, the moped rider, has been taken by ambulance to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. No details on any injury at this time. No one else reported as being injured. A woman will be the subject of a report to the Procurator Fiscal for alleged road traffic offences. The Scottish Ambulance Services have been contacted for comment. And that report was by Nicole Mitchell.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Bar to open on a ship hosting Ukrainians. An article written by Drew Sandilands. A bar will be opened on a cruise ship hosting Ukrainian refugees as part of efforts to create a village feel. People seeking refuge due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine have been given temporary accommodation on the ship in Govan by the Scottish Government. Ambassador, the ship's owners, applied for an occasional licence to offer alcohol to the refugees staying at the King George V docks on the River Clyde. Glasgow's licensing board quizzed the firm's representative on security and support for the refugees before agreeing to grant the licence. Neil Hassard, the licensing lawyer representing the applicant, said the licence application was part of a holistic approach, which includes providing education and health services. It's not simply putting a bar on a boat, he said. It's about creating this small village community to try and encourage people out of their cabins. The cruise ship has been chartered to provide accommodation for up to 1,750 people in more than 714 cabins. Mr. Hassard said Ambassador has a very professional onboard crew that operates cruise shops in international waters and are working with a very experienced Scottish licensing expert to provide training to staff. He said the very impressive vessel has various restaurants and lounges, but one distinct area will be used as the bar. There'll be no permission to take alcohol out of the bar or bring it onto the ship. It's hoped to create a village-style experience for them, Mr. Hassard said, adding that the ship will have various things you'd expect in a small village. The bar will give the refugees the opportunity to come together as a community to have a drink and relax. It's understood the bar area will accommodate 57 people, but will be within a wider area which can take more than 300. Mr. Hassard said antisocial behaviour or drunken conduct wouldn't be tolerated. He said it was a pressurised environment which should be treated with dignity first of all. Councillor Dan Hutchison, who represents Govan, said there's a bus that runs from the docks into the community. He asked whether refugees could consume alcohol off the boat. Mr. Hassard said security checks would be in place, and if there were any concerns, the ship's security master would come down to assess them. Councillor Alex Wilson said, "These are people who are exceptionally vulnerable. They come from a place of conflict. They could be suffering from PTSD or a loss of a loved one. My concern is we're mixing alcohol with mental health. How are we going to make sure someone who's in a vulnerable state isn't going to be consuming alcohol? They're then going back to a cabin where they may be isolated." A representative for Ambassador said safeguard is paramount and that the Scottish Government has an allocation process which assesses which people are most capable of living in that environment. Healthcare is available on board, he added. An article written by Drew Sandilands. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Group finishes longest charity bike challenge. An article written by Tom Torrance. It's Europe's longest charity bike ride, taking a group of hardy Scots 5,000 kilometres from Glasgow to Athens. The Thighs of Steel effort has raised almost £100,000 for migrant charity MASS Action, with around 100 different cyclists taking part in the Mammoth Cycle at various points. And as well as the geographic ups and downs of the journey, the team also managed to make it through a vomiting bug. The effort began on July the 16th and ended on Saturday, raising around £93,000 out of their £100,000 target, and took cyclists through countries including France, Italy, Croatia and Albania, with the latter country giving rise to one of the toughest moments of the whole trip. A bunch of us got a vomiting bug from swimming in Lake Skroda in Albania, Georgie Cottle, a volunteer coordinator at the charity Scottish Detainee Visitors, said. What was incredible about that, though, was how those who weren't ill stepped up to look after everyone else, cooking us plain pasta with salt and olive oil. Somehow we managed to get back on the bikes the day after and climbed Mount Dashti, the mountain peak that overlooks Tirana, the capital of Albania. It was one of the greatest descents of the trip, down into a canyon, through 2 road tunnels at 60 kilometres an hour and across a suspension bridge, with birds of prey flying alongside. She added that she thought of cycling even 1 inch seemed inconceivable the day before, but the support network from the group propelled all riders to carry out the climbing feat. As the cycle drew to a close through a steep ride up one of the most famous hills in Athens, Ms. Cottle said the group felt simultaneously excited and daunted. When the group reached the peak, they rolled down the hill for falafel and beers at a local bike shop. Ms. Cottle added that the ride could not have been done without the support of the 2,700 donors who gave some of their hard-earned cash to the cause, or the hundreds of kind, generous, hospitable folk that we've met along the way. She added, people filled our water bottles, translated Albanian road signs for us, pointed us the right way to the best snacks, let us pet their baby rescue piglet, or invited us into their gardens for the night. The money raised will be distributed to projects and organisations by MASS Action once the cycle ends, with Cora, an international collective which provides hot food, asylum support, creative workshops and clothes to migrants in Athens, being one of the places which will receive money. Money from the cycle will also help to fund the Maisie Housing Project, which provides accommodation to single men who may be kept out of housing projects because of some assumptions made about men from non-Western places. An article written by Tom Torrance. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Fundraiser to save vital community activity hub. An exclusive feature article written by Lauren Brownlee. An appeal has been launched to help prevent a much-loved community centre from closing its doors. Hundreds of people enjoy attending Leithland Neighbourhood Centre in Pollok each week, including disabled people, elderly residents and children. But the venue, which was opened more than 3 decades ago, is currently under threat due to the cost of living crisis, rising energy bills and the effects of COVID-19. Matilda McCulloch-Reid, leader of Astra Kids Special Needs Club, which operates in the centre, has launched a fundraising bid to help keep the facility open. The 51-year-old said, "Our club has been running for 15 years and has always been held in the centre. It's for parents to get together to support each other and for the children to de-stress and have fun. It's open for children aged 2 right up till they feel like they don't want to come anymore. We never turn anybody away." Leithland is the only community centre left in Pollok. The thing with our club is, if the centre closes, we can't go anywhere else. No other place would offer us storage. We've got space there for televisions, computers and things like that. And it's all routine for the children. It's taken them a long time to get used to the centre. There wouldn't be anything without it. There would be no clubs and no function hires. We've got children coming to do Irish dancing. We've got elderly people that come in for art classes. There would be nothing. Several dance groups, fitness groups and social groups use the centre to run their classes. A cafe also serves food, with the profits being put back into the centre. Matilda from Pollok added, "It would be really sad if the centre closed down. The land that it's on belongs to Glasgow City Council and the community centre is for the purpose of the people of Pollok. If it closes down, then the land goes back to Glasgow City Council. I doubt there would be another community centre opening. It's under threat because of lockdown. When it opened back up, there were restrictions which affected the cafe because people couldn't sit in groups to eat. People would drop their kids off and leave, or adults using the clubs couldn't sit and eat because of the restrictions. The cafe wasn't bringing in enough money. Then you've got the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis. the gas and electricity bills have just rocketed. We've had a lot of people saying how sad it would be if the centre closed. People have actually been telling us, I remember when my mum and my dad or my gran used to go. People telling us how they met their current husband or wife. Lovely, lovely stories, very nostalgic. People are concerned it will close and there won't be anything left in Pollock. Nearly £1,800 has been raised so far, but these funds will only help in the short term. Meetings have been taking place to work out longer-term plans. Matilda said, all the club leaders got together and we're all individually doing as much fundraising as we can, bringing it all together, and it's all going to be getting put into the centre. Shield Hall Cleansing Department is organising a charity football match and kindly donating the funds to the centre. Nethercraig Sports Centre is allowing them to use their facilities for free. We need to try to keep the kitchen open as the money made in the cafe goes back into the centre. Voluntary kitchen staff and a caretaker are currently being sought. If you can help, contact Leithland Neighbourhood Centre via Facebook. An exclusive feature article written by Lauren Brownlee. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Mums launch service for struggling parents today. An article written by Rebecca Newlands. 2 Glasgow mums have teamed up to organise an emergency food bank for mothers with children on the day of the Queen's funeral. Following the announcement that food banks across the country would be closing for the funeral today, working mums Dr Anastasia Ryan and Claire Morrison launched the Mother Bank. Set up on Friday, it'll operate as an emergency pop-up bank for struggling mothers and carers with no access to supplies such as milk, baby food and nappies. Anastasia said, the extent of child poverty in Scotland right now is devastating, and it's times like this we need to pull together whilst continuing to speak out about the injustice of a system that's pushing mothers and carers to the brink of destitution. During times of economic crisis, persistent inequalities mean that women, particularly in low-income areas, are the hardest hit and completely reliant on community food banks. With Monday's closures, we've set up the Mother Bank as a temporary service for emergency supplies such as nappies and formula. A Just Giving page for the drive has already raised more than £2,500 and has attracted support from Glasgow singer Joseph, MSPs Monica Lennon and Paul Sweeney, and human rights activist and lawyer Amma Anwar. The Waitrose supermarket on Byres Road showed support by offering pre-prepared bags of essentials to the value of £10, which people could purchase in-store and drop off at the information desk for collection yesterday. Claire, who's also head of PR at Scottish creative agency Made Brave, said, "We've been truly overwhelmed by the response. It clearly struck a chord, no doubt a perfect storm of the frustrations surrounding the cost of living crisis combined with food bank closures. It really is a terrible time for a huge portion of the population, but most of all for young mums with no or low income who are struggling to provide for their little ones. Thinking about those women suffering lonely nights, worrying about how they'll feed their child is what inspired the Mother Bank, and we're so grateful for all the support so far. People really do make Glasgow." The Mother Bank will open from 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock today at SWG3 in York Hill in Glasgow's West End. For those who are unable to attend, a door-to-door delivery service will be offered from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. An article written by Rebecca Newlands. Glasgow Times on Monday the 19th of September. Lifestyle. When Glasgow got its Squinty Bridge. Celebrations and protests at the opening of the Clyde Arc. An article written by Anne Fotheringham. Do you remember when Glasgow got its Squinty Bridge? The Clyde Arc, to give it its proper name, recently made the list of the most Instagrammable views in Scotland. It came 5th, with the Glenfinnan Viaduct, made famous by J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books, topping the poll by the popular app. The bridge has had an interesting history since it first opened in 2006, connecting Finnieston and Govan and becoming the first city centre traffic crossing over the Clyde since the Kingston Bridge in 1970. Costing around £20 million, it has a total span of around 140 metres and has been designed to cope with a future light transport system such as a tram. It was officially opened on September the 18th, 2006, by the then Glasgow City Council leader Stephen Purcell, who led a procession of vintage vehicles. A small protest by people complaining about parking charges disrupted the opening speeches. People had been allowed to walk across the new bridge during the previous 2 days as part of Glasgow's annual Doors Open weekend. One of the first to cross was David Buchanan from Bishopbriggs with his dog Ailey. In the days following the opening, a Glasgow City Council planner called Ron Smith found a 1929 map that showed the old Glasgow Corporation had plans to create a masterpiece bridge at almost exactly the same spot more than 70 years before. It was drawn by Thomas Summers, the Master of Works and City Engineer for the corporation, but why it never materialised remains a mystery. In 2008, the Clyde Arch had to close when a forged steel component connecting a metal upright support to the arch failed, and another was discovered to have cracked. It was shut from January until June that year as engineers worked to repair the damage and replace all 28 connectors. The Squinty Bridge carries around 10,000 vehicles a day. In 2017, all 22 names of those killed in the Manchester Arena terrorist attack, including Barra schoolgirl Ailey MacLeod, who was 14, were displayed on the railings in tribute to the victims, along with signs that read, "With Manchester" and "Respect Life." In 2015, hundreds of crosses with the names of soldiers killed in action were tied to the bridge. The Squinty Bridge should not be confused with the Squiggly Bridge, a pedestrian river crossing at Tradeston. An article written by Anne Fotheringham. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Minister warned over poor quality schools. An article written by John Paul Holden. Ministers have been warned a task force is needed to tackle the issue of poor quality school premises after analysis revealed thousands more pupils are receiving lessons in educationally inadequate buildings. Figures also indicate a marked deceleration in the rate at which improvements or upgrades are taking place, as well as a near doubling in the number of learners attending campuses that have major structural defects or are at risk of failure. Education Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville has stressed that a record number of schools are in good or satisfactory condition. She added that a £2 billion investment drive would benefit tens of thousands of children and young people. But Henry Matels, Emeritus Professor of Education at the University of the West of Scotland, told our sister title The Herald it was a disgrace, given the sums already invested, that there are any schools north of the border still deemed to be poor or bad. That the figures have risen over the last year is bad news, and unless something is done about it, a downward trend is certain to continue, he said. Although it's not clear from the figures whether these are big secondary schools or a larger number of smaller schools, something needs to be done. Clearly, there's a need for a task force to immediately bring these schools up to standard. It'll cost money. There should be no bad schools in Scotland. According to the latest data, the number of pupils in buildings rated poor, C, or bad, D, for their ability to support quality learning and teaching jumped from 77,796 last year to 80,385 this year. In percentage terms, the proportion increased from 11.1% to 11.4%, the first rise since 2016. Critics acknowledge the figures are not clear-cut, with the number of premises rated poor or bad for suitability declining from 309 to 295 during the same time period. However, they've also underlined signs that progress may be stalling. Professor Matels said he was particularly concerned that the number of pupils at schools where the fabric has been graded D increased from 855 last year to 1,688 this year. He added, "I think these figures from the Scottish Government are very disappointing, especially so for the parents and the students who are in these substandard schools, which the Government itself deems bad, meaning effective learning is unlikely to take place." Dr. Lindsay Patterson, formerly Professor of Education Policy at Edinburgh University, added, "We know from the disruption during the COVID years that equipment and learning conditions are very important for children's learning. The children whom that will harm most are those whose families struggle to make ends meet, even in the best of times. The looming difficulties with the cost of living will not help. It's therefore all the more important that the learning conditions which schools offer are at least satisfactory. That's as urgent a matter for government policy as the crucial direct help to families with rising fuel bills. An article written by John Paul Holden. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Nation carries out moment of reflection. An article written by Sarah Campbell. The nation held a minute's silence to mourn the late monarch's death last night. For those unable to make it to London to honour Her Majesty as she lay in state, the government hoped that the moment of reflection would allow for the United Kingdom to come together as one and remember the Queen. Many of those observing the occasion at home watched a tribute to the Queen, broadcast on BBC channels, featuring a pre-recorded message from the Queen Consort. Camilla spoke of her mother-in-law's position as a solitary woman, carrying out her duties in a male-dominated world. She also shared a touching memory of her wedding day on April the 9th, 2005, saying, "I remember coming from here, Clarence House, to go to Windsor the day I got married, when I probably wasn't firing on all cylinders, quite nervous, and for some unknown reason I put on a pair of shoes, and one had an inch heel and one had a 2-inch heel. So talk about hop along, and there's nothing I could do. I was halfway down in the car before I realised, and she could see, and she laughed about it and said, 'Look, I'm terribly sorry.' She had a good sense of humour." As Big Ben told to signal the beginning of the silence, members of the public gathered at home, on their doorstep or street, or at community events and vigils to pay their respects. In Glasgow, play was paused during a Davis Cup match between Joe Salisbury, Neil Skupski, Alexander Bublik and Alexander Nedovizov as the Emirates Arena joined in the silence. The bell at Big Ben was struck once more at 8:01 as it ended. Those who were overseas were encouraged to mark the silence on their own local times. A second moment of silence will take place today across the nation at 5 to 12 during the final chapter of the Queen's funeral. An article written by Sarah Campbell. Glasgow Times on Monday the 19th of September. Opinion. City appreciated Princess Anne's visit at such a sad and difficult time. A column written by Jacqueline McLaren, the Lord Provost of Glasgow. It's been a memorable month for all of us. The world mourned the passing of a remarkable monarch in Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. A woman who reigned with great pride, grace, dignity and wisdom. Her strong sense of public service evident for all to see. We also ushered in a new king, His Majesty King Charles III, and welcomed the start of the Carolean era. In my role as Glasgow's Lord Lieutenant, I found myself plunged into a series of ceremonies and ancient proceedings and protocols, some of which date back to medieval times, like the proclamation of the new king here in George Square. A responsibility carried out flawlessly by our Sheriff Principal, Craig Turnbull, Sheriffdom of Glasgow and Strathkelvin. I also had the privilege of meeting Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal on Thursday at the City Chambers. It was heartening to see so many people turn up to pay their respects. I recognise, like everyone else, the death of Her Majesty and the installation of a new king, while naturally a matter of great public interest, is also a deeply painful and private matter for the royal family. I pay tribute to the Princess Royal for her fortitude and for taking the time to visit Glasgow. I know the city appreciated her visit. The patrons she met and the members of the public she chatted to, visiting the City Chambers to sign the Book of Condolence, were extremely honoured to have the opportunity to speak with her at such a difficult and sad time. It's all been a bit of a whirlwind and a real baptism of fire for me since becoming Glasgow's first citizen 4 months ago. It's also been the privilege of my life to represent Glasgow and her proud citizens during this epoch in our shared history. Today I'll be in London attending the state funeral of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, an event that will doubtless be watched on televisions across the world by millions of mourners. A momentous occasion that we will never witness the like of again. During her visit, Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal assured me that she intends to return to Glasgow. I know that will bring great comfort to many of you. A column written by Jacqueline McLaren. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. The Queen will be laid to rest. An article written by Sarah Campbell. Hundreds of Glaswegians have been signing the city's Book of Condolence for Queen Elizabeth ahead of her state funeral today. Throughout the week, the book, which will be kept in the custody of the city, has been held in the City Chamber's Satinwood suite. Glasgow residents have been passing on messages to the royal family and sharing what the Queen meant to them following her death on September the 8th. Since then, huge crowds gathered outside the city chambers as Princess Anne visited Glasgow to meet representatives of organisations of which the Queen was a patron. Thousands of people turned up to support the Princess Royal. Princess Anne spent time speaking to well-wishers and reading the Book of Condolence in honour of her late mother. She also viewed dozens of floral tributes left outside the city chambers. Yesterday, people were urged not to set off to join the queue for the Queen's lying in state, which ended at 6:30 this morning. Thousands of people have made the steady pilgrimage across central London to pay their respects to the late monarch over the past 5 days. On Sunday morning, the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport revealed the queue time was at least 14 hours. Meanwhile, United States President Joe Biden said the world is better because of the Queen, as he offered his condolences to the British people for their loss. He was speaking at Lancaster House after visiting Westminster Hall to pay his respects to the late monarch. Mr. Biden arrived with his wife Jill at the lying in state shortly before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, ahead of his attendance at today's funeral. They were joined by the United States Ambassador to the UK, Jane Hartley. Mr. Biden said, "To all the people of England, all the people of the United Kingdom, our hearts go out to you. You were fortunate to have had her for 70 years. We all were. The world is better for her." The President also attended a reception hosted by King Charles III. Around 500 guests were present, including Prime Minister Liz Truss, President of Israel Isaac Herzog, President of Ireland Michael D. Higgins, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, King Felipe and Queen Letizia of Spain, King Carl Gustav XVI and Queen Sylvia of Sweden, and Queen Margaretha II of Denmark. An article written by Sarah Campbell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Chess is bringing Southside community closer together. An article written by Sarah Campbell. A Southside group has introduced more people than ever to the game of chess this season. But Rhys McCrossan, social media manager for Queen's Park Chess Club, says a surge in numbers is down to more than just competitive spirit. He explained, "Chess is a great way to meet people. You wouldn't expect it, but it really promotes diversity. You end up spending time with people you would never have met in any other scenario." The club is based at the Wellcroft Bowling Club, with meetups every Tuesday and outdoor Sunday sessions taking place at the Queen's Park Duck Pond. While there are plenty of skilled players within the group, people of all abilities are welcome to join in with the fun, Rhys said. Chess, in general, had a massive surge in popularity around 2 years ago. Most people who come to play are a little bit older, who didn't realise it was something they enjoyed until they had the time to try it properly. Also, not everyone had the chance to play chess when they were younger, either because they weren't introduced to it or didn't have someone to teach them. One of our main goals has always been to bring the local community together, and we're really proactive in trying to help beginners learn for free. Anyone local to the south side may well have noticed another avid group of chess players in the area taking to the tables of Brodie's Bar on Thursday nights. These unofficial gatherings were started by Marianne Burns, a local woman who last year found herself looking to make new friends while putting a lockdown hobby into practice. Rather than a close proximity causing any rivalry, the groups now work side by side to encourage new players to enjoy the social side of the game. Rhys said, "Our partnership with the Brodie's Thursday Club is a recent development. At the start of summer, some of our members stumbled upon the group who were playing there and became great friends. Now, most of the people there play at our sessions too. It's a great way to meet new people and have a few drinks while you play across the board." An article written by Sarah Campbell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of September. Tributes pour in for crash victim. An article written by Lauren Brownlee. Poignant tributes have been paid to a woman who died in a road crash in Johnston. Stephanie Burnfield has been named locally as the victim of the tragic accident, which took place in Beath Road at its junction with Overton Road in the early hours of Thursday morning. Emergency services were called to the one-vehicle crash at around 3:30 in the morning after a blue Vauxhall Astra collided with a wall. Police said the 31-year-old driver, who was the only occupant of the car, was taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, where she was later pronounced dead. Paying tribute to her sister on Facebook, Samantha Burnfield said, "Stephanie, you've left a huge hole in all our hearts that will never be filled. My beautiful sister, you will be missed so dearly by so many. You've left behind 2 beautiful children who will always love you and now miss you. We will all cherish our memories with you and keep you in our thoughts and hearts forever. We love you more than you will ever know. Thank you to everyone who has sent their condolences. It hasn't gone unnoticed." Ms. Burnfield's mother Helen also took to social media on Thursday to share the tragic news. She said, "Today our beautiful daughter Stephanie sadly lost her life. We'll keep you in our thoughts and hearts forever. Our love for you will never end." Hundreds of people have now offered their condolences on social media to friends and family of Miss Burnfield, who's understood to have been from the Johnston area. Rachel Mccann said, "So sorry to hear about Stephanie. I've loads of great memories and will never forget our time together as teenagers. I'm devastated for you all." Ewan Blackwood added, "So sorry to hear this. Was years since I worked with Steph, but she was always buzzing and full of joy." Beath Road was closed in the early hours of Thursday morning while crash investigations were carried out and reopened at around 7 a.m. Sergeant James Crawford of Renfrewshire and Inverclyde Road Policing Unit said, "Our thoughts are with the family. I'd appeal to anyone who was in the area at the time and may have seen the car before the crash to get in touch with us." An article written by Lauren Bramley.
From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of September 2022, from the news section. It's something you never forget. Glasgow woman speaks out after brother donates kidney, by Lauren Brownlee. A Glasgow woman has revealed how grateful she is to live a normal life after having 2 kidneys donated by kind-hearted family members. Ifra Raza was just 11 years old when she collapsed and her kidneys suddenly failed. It came as a shock as the schoolgirl had no previous health issues. She went into cardiac arrest and spent time in a coma. Her family were told to come and say their goodbyes. The 32-year-old, who got both her kidneys removed and was put onto dialysis, said, "It was a complete shock to the system for everyone. There's no history of kidney failure in the family. I had no prior illness, nothing at all. It was completely out of the blue. I was on dialysis for 2 years. Eventually, my uncle Ijaz donated one of his kidneys to me when I was 13. They said to me, 'You'll always need another transplant because you've had one so young. We just don't know when.' So it was always something in the back of my mind. Because I get regular checkups, I get an idea of what the function is like, so it was fine. It was doing really well. Unfortunately, due to stress, Ifra's kidney started to fail sooner than expected in 2019. I spoke to my brothers, not with the intention of them doing anything about it, but just to let them know what was going on," Ifra, 32, said. Both of them instantly asked, "What can we do to help? When can we help?" They were just absolute gems. Adil and Nabil went for testing, and Adil was a slightly better match, so they opted for him. He started with his tests, and lockdown happened. Everything stopped, and I had to go back on dialysis. It just gets you by, but it only does the job of about 10% of a kidney function, so you don't feel great, but it's better than nothing. Because I was classed as high risk, I couldn't do my job during lockdown, which kind of worked in my favour because it meant I could rest. After the first lockdown, they were doing some tests again. Luckily, Adil had already had the major ones done, and there were only a few remaining. The 29-year-old was confirmed as being a suitable match, and on September the 21st, 2020, the transplant went ahead. Just because you're related, it doesn't mean there's a guarantee you're a match, and even then there's no guarantee your body will take to it too well, Ifra said. It's essentially a miracle in itself. It's a very risky thing. Anything can happen. We did have a few blips in between. We weren't sure if it was going to go ahead. I was more hesitant. I really didn't feel comfortable with the idea, but Adil was adamant he wanted to do this. It's something you can never put into words. I'm fully aware just how lucky I am to have people like that in my life. I get emotional every time I think about it. It's something you never forget. It's always something in the back of your mind. As safe as the operation is, they're still essentially putting their lives at risk to save mine. So what do you even say to that? They are just absolute gems. They never mention it or bring it up. I try and live my life in a certain way that makes them feel proud. When you come from an ethnic minority background, getting a match is hard. You could be on dialysis for over 10 years. I hate to think how long I'd have had to wait and how my life would be restricted if it wasn't for them and other members of family that came forward as well. I've been able to live a normal life thanks to them. After the operation, Ifra and Adil from Manswood went through a long recovery process. She said, "You've got the side effects and all these other things. It's not smooth sailing immediately afterwards." Adil was fantastic. After 6 months, he was pretty well back to normal. You can't rush into anything. You have to be patient with yourself and remind yourself you have gone through such a big thing. In your head, you forget. I felt fantastic compared with when I was on dialysis. It was night and day straight away. I had all this energy, but when I tried to do something, my body was like, no, you have to wait a while. You have to rebuild that strength. With Adil, the main reason he was so keen to go ahead with the transplant was that my uncle is the best example. We've seen what he's like. We've seen what the future is like after having given a kidney 19 years ago. He's got children, he's got a fantastic job, he's super fit, he still plays badminton and football. Although it's not an easy thing to do, it still takes a special person to do something like that. Ifra and Adil are keen to raise awareness of kidney disease. The pair completed a zip ride across the River Clyde on Sunday and have raised nearly £600. Ifra added, "Kidney failure is really common, but it's not as well known of. They call it the silent killer. You tend not to have symptoms until it's almost too late." From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday 20th of September 2022, from the news section. Madeleine Mccann's parents lose latest stage of legal battle against Portuguese detective, by Kieran Doody. Madeleine Mccann's parents, Kate and Jerry, have lost the latest stage of their legal battle over comments made by retired Portuguese detective Gonzalo Amaral. Lawyers for the couple had argued that Portuguese authorities had breached their right to a private and family life in the way the courts there dealt with their libel claims against Mr. Amaral. He claimed in a book, documentary and newspaper interview that the Mccanns were involved in their daughter Madeleine's disappearance. The court found that the reputation of the couple had been damaged by the fact that they were made official suspects in the case for a short time, rather than Mr. Amaral's comments. Madeleine disappeared while on holiday with her family in Praia da Luz, Portugal, in May 2007. The Mccanns now have 3 months to appeal the decision. When was Madeleine Mccann abducted? Madeleine was 3 years old when she went missing on May 3, 2007, while on holiday in Portugal. Her disappearance sparked one of the most high-profile missing person searches in history. Her parents, Kate and Jerry Mccann, have vowed to never give up looking for their daughter. Last May marked what would have been Madeleine's 18th birthday, as her parents revealed every May that passes is a reminder of years past, of years together lost or stolen. That article was by Kieran Doody. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday, 20th of September 2022, from the news section. New wind farm set to provide clean electricity to 21,000 homes, by Lauren Brownlee. An onshore wind farm development that would provide clean electricity to meet the needs of 21,000 homes each year has been given the green light. Banks Renewables planning application to build some of the UK's most effective onshore wind turbines at Milrich Wind Farm has now been approved by South Lanarkshire Council and is on course to become operational within 3 years. Milrich will play host to 6 powerful wind turbines with an installed generation capacity of around 36 MW, enough to meet the electricity needs of all the households in a town around the size of East Kilbride. In addition to the generation of vital, clean, green energy, Banks Renewables' £40 million project will displace over 18,000 tonnes of CO2 annually from the UK's electricity supply grid, the equivalent of removing almost 7,000 petrol cars from the road. Robin Winstanley, Sustainability and External Affairs Manager at Banks Renewables, said, "To gain planning permission is a major milestone for Milrich. The development will bring many social, environmental and community benefits to the local area, and we're delighted South Lanarkshire Council has approved these exciting plans." The Hamilton-based renewables company has consulted with the community throughout the planning process and will set up a local community fund which is expected to create up to £180,000 in revenue annually. The local economy will benefit from local contracts worth £11.7 million during construction, with business rates of £18 million expected to be injected into public coffers, in addition to supporting many jobs over the lifetime of the development. Robin added, "By working closely with the surrounding community, this project will help Scotland generate much needed clean, green electricity, as well as provide local people and groups with funding to support the growth of important initiatives that benefit the communities close to Milrich Wind Farm. With the next steps of detailed design and construction, Milrich Wind Farm is on track to help Scotland achieve its ambitious net zero targets, boosting the UK's energy security by producing green electricity by 2025. This article was by Lauren Brownlee.
From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 21st of September 2022, from the news section, Chinese Consul General calls for unity as Mid-Autumn Moon Festival is celebrated in Glasgow, by Stuart Patterson. China's representative in Scotland has called for greater cooperation and unity between the Chinese community and the local Scottish population. Hao Dana, China's acting Consul General in Edinburgh, joined festivities as the ancient Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival was celebrated in Glasgow with loud and colourful line dances and Chinese entertainment. The Glasgow Chinese Recreational Centre and Scotland Fijian Chamber of Commerce staged an event at the Leon Fung restaurant in Sauchiehall Street on Tuesday. Members of the Chinese communities from Glasgow, across Scotland and from England welcome partners, community organisations and politicians for the celebration, also known as the Moon Festival or Mooncake Festival. It was the first Moon Festival gathering since the COVID pandemic cancelled events in 2020 and 2021. The Moon Festival is an autumn harvest celebration in September or October when the full moon is believed to be at its brightest. The coming together of family and friends is a central part of this festival and giving thanks for the harvest alongside hope for prosperity in the future. Jimmy Lynn, Chairman of Scotland Fijian Chamber of Commerce, welcomed the guests to the celebration. Hao Dana, Acting Consul General of the People's Republic of China, was a guest of honour, with Glasgow's Lord Provost, Jacqueline Mccann. Ms. Dana said, "A big and bright full moon is a symbol of family. It is a time to be with family and friends. In less than 2 weeks' time we will embrace China's National Day." She added that the Scotland Fijian Chamber of Commerce had worked with communities here to encourage cooperation during the trying times of COVID. She added, "I hope the Chinese community will continue to unite with Scottish local communities to overcome difficulties. We oppose racial discrimination and hate crimes against the Chinese community." Councillor McLaren said the festival was on a par with Chinese New Year and is 300 years old. She added, "The moon is brightest when at its fullest size to light people's path to prosperity and good fortune." Inside, music, dance and song were performed throughout a Chinese celebration dinner. Wen Ying Nak Kung Fu Association performed the lion dance outside on Sauchiehall Street and inside the Loon Fun restaurant where the celebration dinner was taking place. And that article was by Stuart Patterson. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 21st of September 2022, from the news section, community urged to be vigilant after thefts and housebreakings, by Rebecca Newlands. The public is being urged by police to stay vigilant after a spate of thefts and housebreakings. A 25-year-old man was arrested and charged on September the 20th in connection with the alleged incidents which occurred across Lanarkshire. He is due to appear at Hamilton Sheriff Court on Wednesday. Officers are now reminding people in communities to be aware of any suspicious behaviour in their area and report it to the force, who are dedicated to catching the thieves and solving all cases of housebreaking. Response Sergeant Stephen Bryson said, "Housebreaking has a devastating impact on victims and our local communities. Across Lanarkshire, we are dedicated to identifying those responsible and will continue to carry out robust enforcement activity. I want to reassure communities that we have resources in place to thoroughly investigate all reports of housebreaking, and I would ask residents to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity to police." And that article was by Rebecca Newlands. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 21st of September 2022, from the news section, former soldier who tried to rape a woman at his Hamilton home jailed, by Grant McCabe. A former soldier who tried to rape a woman at his home has been jailed for 5 years. Referee Shields struck at the flat in Hamilton, South Lanarkshire, days before Christmas 2019. The 44-year-old was today sentenced at the High Court in Glasgow. He had earlier stood trial accused of raping the woman before jurors found him guilty of the reduced charge of attempted rape. Judge Michael O'Grady QC was then told how the sex attacker now admitted responsibility for what he'd done. Janice Green, defending, said, "There has been a change of perspective Mr. Shields has now found, having heard the woman give her evidence." The author of the pre-sentencing report appears to accept that he has accepted his guilt, and he tells me that it is so. He accepted he did not have consent or a reasonable belief in that consent. Describing his time in the armed forces, the advocate also stated, "He had been a man of previous good character. I say that, with regard to his military service, 6 years and a tour of Iraq. In addition, for a number of years, he has offered voluntary service in veteran groups which are for those traumatised by war. He also assists in a website for other veterans." Shields, still of Hamilton, was also placed on the sex offenders register. And that article was by Grant McCabe. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 21st of September 2022, from the news section, hunt for suspect after man brutally attacked at Trongate in Glasgow, by Rebecca Newlands, digital journalist. A man was rushed to hospital after being brutally attacked in Glasgow. The 30-year-old was seriously injured after being assaulted in the Trongate area of the city in the early hours of Sunday, September 18. He was attacked at around 3:50 a.m. He was taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital to be treated for his injuries. Cops are now hunting for the assailant, who is described as male, aged between 25 and 30. He was wearing a white shirt, a black jacket, dark jeans and white trainers at the time. Detective Constable Alison Ferguson of Greater Glasgow CID said, "Our inquiries into this incident are ongoing, and I would urge anyone with information to get in touch. We are keen to speak with anyone who may have witnessed the incident or who may have dashcam footage. Anyone with information should contact police on 101, quoting incident number 0732 of Sunday, September the 18th, or call Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111. And that article is by Rebecca Newlands. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 21st of September 2022, from the news section, man jailed after former nursing home used as large-scale drugs factory, by Glasgow Court Press Agency. A boxing coach snared after a former nursing home was turned into a large-scale drugs factory has been jailed for 7 years. Mark Quinn was linked to more than £10 million of amphetamine moving following a series of cross-border raids. A judge heard how detectives had swooped at Aldergrange care home in Liverpool, which had been used to prepare and bulk out the drugs for trafficking. Quinn was today sentenced at the High Court in Glasgow. The 58-year-old had effectively been on the run for 7 years, becoming one of the UK's most wanted men before being tracked to Holland in October 2021. Quinn had pled not guilty at a hearing in Edinburgh in July to being concerned to the supply of amphetamine between August 2013 and April 2014. Lord Beckett told him, "This was drug dealing on a grand scale, aggravated by a connection with serious and organised crime. Your involvement was associated with seizures of large quantities of amphetamine on 4 occasions. This involved hundreds of kilograms of the drug in total, with a potential amount in excess of £10 million. The judge added some aspects of the gang's sophisticated operation were rarely encountered by the police. Quinn would have been jailed for 9 years but for his guilty plea. He had been a target of the Operation Capuas police probe in 2013, investigating a major crime gang. Officers initially seized a £3 million drugs haul at a flat in Paisley, Renfrewshire, in August of that year. Prosecutor David Mccann said Quinn's fingerprints were on the packaging. In February 2014, police then kept tabs on a Ford Transit travelling from Scotland to Liverpool. Quinn was later seen driving the van in the grounds of the nursing home and loading items into the back. The vehicle was later stopped on the M74 in Lanarkshire, with a total of £2.4 million worth of amphetamine inside. Weeks later, Quinn was caught back in Scotland before being seen with another individual in Liverpool. This person was later halted driving north. A total of £3.2 million worth of amphetamine was seized at the time. Police went on to raid the nursing home premises days later. Drugs to the value of more than £2 million were found stored inside the heath-sealed bags. Mr. McLean stated, "It became apparent the building was being renovated. There were 3 metal shipping containers in the yard and construction workers on site. A number of items were recovered, which indicated the premises were being used for the production and preparation of amphetamine from amphetamine oil." The court heard a warrant was originally issued for Quinn in 2014. This ended up being a European arrest warrant the following year. The authorities even used a van with his face plastered on the side in Spain's Costa del Sol in a bid to trace him. Quinn was eventually found last year in Maastricht in Holland, where he had been working. His lawyer said Quinn had also been involved in the building trade and had been part of a project to transform the nursery home into luxury flats. He then had money troubles, leading him to asking certain people for cash. They then looked upon him as easy prey. Gail Gianni, defending, added, "He has no excuses, but if there had not been the financial climate at the time, he would not be in this court." And that article was taken from the Glasgow Court Press Agency. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 21st of September 2022, from the news section, "Victim extremely shaken after being robbed by masked woman in Glasgow," by Rebecca Newlands. A woman has been extremely shaken after being robbed and assaulted by a masked woman in Glasgow. The victim was in a common close in Arlington Place on Sunday evening in the city's woodlands. At around 9 p.m, she was approached by a man and a woman who was donning a white surgical mask. She was pushed by the woman and had her purse stolen. Officers are now hunting the thief and her accomplice and are urging anyone who witnessed anything suspicious to come forward. The thief is described as white, aged 35 to 40, of heavy build with blonde hair. At the time of the incident, she wore a white t-shirt, black leggings, a black jacket and a black baseball cap, as well as a mask. The man accompanying her is described as white, aged 35 to 40 years, of slim build with short blonde hair. Detective Constable Lee McIntyre said, "Fortunately, the woman was not hurt, but she was left extremely shaken by what happened." Inquiries are being carried out door to door, and officers are also reviewing CCTV footage. "I am appealing to anyone who is in the area, particularly Arlington Place and Ashley Street, and may have seen this man and woman, or anyone acting suspiciously, to get in touch. Likewise, if you have a private CCTV or dashcam footage that could help with our investigation, then please contact us." Anyone with information is asked to make contact with officers via 101, quoting incident number 3321 of Sunday, September the 18th, or call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. And that article was by Rebecca Newlands.
And that was this week's Glasgow Times News podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.